What I'm going to be taking you through is how to write an introduction properly. And we're going to be using the Angry Pete method that we talked about in class. So before we start anything, I'm going to show you an introduction that I've written. And then after I go through it, we're going to deconstruct it and just take a look at how I got to the piece of work that I'm showing you. So, if the question is discovery is how we become better versions of ourselves, I have created an introduction based on an essay that I would have written if I had to answer it, essentially. At the heart of any discovery is an individual developing a sense of self. It can be therefore suggested that discovery is the individual's search for meaning while exploring new perspectives and experiences. These experiences are not inherently positive or negative, but the discovery will shape the individual's perspective on themselves and the world around them. This idea is raised in A Way by Michael Gow, which explores how experiences shape or challenge assumed identities, and in Room by Lenny Abrahamson, where perspectives of the world drastically alter dynamics between the individual and their relationship with others and their own self-worth. These texts, in their own way, show that regardless of the type of discovery, the effect is always a reevaluation of meaning for the individual. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, but before we do that, we're going to go back over how to write an introduction so you understand what I'm saying and the steps that I took to say that. So, Angry Tom eats tuna every lunch. So previously I've said Angry Pete, but I've decided to change it to Angry Tom so that we have a clearer idea of what I mean. Angry Tom eats tuna every lunchtime is a way for you to understand it. Each of the first letters are capitalized so that you can remember those individual parts. So the first one is your argument. So the first sentence of every introduction you ever write should let the reader know exactly what you're talking about. So you need to engage with the question in any way you can. This does not mean simply restating the question, but rather showing that you understand what the question is asking. So for example, if we look at what I've done, the question is discovery is how we become better versions of ourselves. I've said at the heart of discovery, the heart of any discovery is an individual developing a sense of self, which is the same idea. If the question is asking about self-discovery, you need to make sure that you're referencing self-discovery and showing that you understand that what they're wanting from you is that self-discovery. After you've given that, you need to give your thesis. This is what happens when you don't edit. There we go. This statement needs to provide clarification on the above statement. It should give an indication of the perspective in which your analysis is coming from. This is where you lay out the thematic ideas you're presenting. Your thesis is the central part of your essay, and it needs to be sustained throughout all of the essay, and it needs to be in those first couple of sentences. What do you think about the topic? What you think is most important? Everything else is proving the thesis. If you think about it as like a math equation, the thesis is the answer, and the rest of it is just showing the working out, how you've come to that conclusion. After you've given your thesis, give a bit of an elaboration. It's 1 to 2 sentences to show the reader you understand what you're talking about. This section is all about concept, and it's all about conceptual understanding. If you you don't actually have to have a large thing. It can just be 1 sentence to show that you understand what you're talking about, to show that there are complexities in what you're trying to say. Okay? These 3 sentences, so the argument, the thesis, and the elaboration, generally speaking, follow in that order, but you don't have to. As long as they have all of them, but specifically the thesis. The thesis is the most important thing. If your thesis runs on to a bit of an elaboration, that's fine, as long as you clearly have a defined thesis. After you have your thesis, you then need to talk about your texts. This is where you introduce what you're going to be talking about to support your argument. The texts and then the explaining, so you go into brief detail about the arguments you're going to be presenting. These are interchangeable. If you look at the introduction that I've written, I've actually mixed them together, and that's okay, as long as you introduce what the text is and why it's relevant. Okay, this doesn't mean telling me the plot. This doesn't mean telling me when it was made or when it was written, but rather giving a brief summary of the conceptual ideas that you're going to be talking about. And then at the end, you link it all together. So with that in mind, we're going to go back over the one that I've written. So discovery is how we become better versions of ourselves. At the heart of any discovery is an individual developing a sense of self. That is our argument. Okay, we are directly referencing that the question is asking us about self-discovery in some way. So I have made it so that we're talking about any discovery is about developing developing sense of self. So you can talk about anything really, as long as you make it sure that you are referencing the type of discovery that it's asking you to. It can therefore be suggested that discovery is the individual search for meaning while exploring new perspectives and experience. This is my thesis. I believe that discovery is the individual search for meaning. That's what I believe that it is. This supports the argument, and this supports the idea that they're trying to get you to discuss, but fundamentally, that's what I believe discovery is. I then elaborate on that by saying these experiences are not inherently positive or negative. So discovery isn't good or bad, but it is talking about their discovery will shape the individual's perspective on themselves and the world around them. So I've presented my thesis by saying that discovery is the individual search for meaning. I've then clarified that by saying that discovery is about the individual perspective, and it's talking about the individual perspective of self as well as the world around them. Okay? The essay question is talking about self-discovery. I've said that it also includes the world around them, so you can talk about them as long as it relates back to that central idea of the search for meaning. I've then introduced my text. This idea is raised in a way by Michael Gow. One thing I forgot to do, and it's a style thing more than anything else, is that you underline text like away or room because they are solid text. Films, plays, novels, underline them. If it's a song, if it's a poem, you need to put it in inverted commas. Okay? It's a style thing. It doesn't matter too much, but it is just something that is good to get into a habit of doing, because that's how you reference properly. This idea is raised in a way by Michael Gow, which explores how experiences shape or challenge assumed identities. So that's what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about a way, I'm talking about experiences shaping or challenging assumed identities. I'm talking about Coral finding out who she is after losing her son. I'm talking about Meg's family, and I'm talking about, what's her name, Gwen? I'm talking about Gwen and talking about how she has had to confront who she is as a result of the new information, the new experiences. Those are my key points, but I've summed it up into one sentence. And in Room by Lenny Abrahamson, where perspectives of the world drastically alter dynamics between individuals and their relationships with others and their own self-worth. I'm not going to go too much into it because if you haven't seen Room, that won't make any sense to you, but whichever text you choose, that's how you do the same sort of thing. You summarize the key points you're going to do and how it relates to the concept of discovery or any concept, transitions, whatever. These texts in their own way show that regardless of the type of discovery, the effect is always a reevaluation of meaning for the individual. I've summed it up and I've brought it back to the thesis, which is connected to the question. Okay? There's only a couple of steps, and if you master that, it'll make that structure really clear. Once your thesis is in place, you need to constantly be referring back to it and to use that language. So if I was writing this based on this introduction, I would always use phrases like the individual search for meaning. I would always use things about like perspective and experiences. I would use things about the idea of shaping individuals. And that's how you make sure that it's a cohesive and clear argument from top to bottom. If there is any questions, please make sure to ask me. I hope this has helped people. And to end, here is a meme.